Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pixelists, the podcast about all the nerdy things we enjoy. I was about to say I'm Blake. I'm Will. That's Blake. And we're here to talk about some Critical Role today. But before we dive into that, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Good. Just ate some lunch. So yeah, that's
fueled up. What'd you have? Now I'm curious.
How dare you? I had leftover General Tao's chicken.
Oh, you made it yourself or?
No, from Hunan.
Okay. I was going to say, that's something I want to add to my repertoire. Like, I'd love to be able to make a homemade version of that because I'm addicted to that as well.
Yeah. My wife, she was picking it up yesterday and she was like, hey, I'm getting you chicken teriyaki. And I was like, no, which is a great option.
Also good.
Yeah, but I was like, no, I got to go to my go-to. I'm the kind of guy who I find something I like and I will never change it ever again. So
I respect that. I'm kind of the same way.
When you try new things, you make mistakes. So
exactly.
Like when my wife, when she gets something new at a restaurant, she's like, this was terrible. I'm so disappointed. I'm always like,
yours?
Well, no. I'm like,
you don't let
see? I'm like, see, I told you.
Turk doesn't share food.
That's why you don't try new things. Joey
doesn't share food. Got my wires crossed there.
That's all right. It's all good.
Did you get, last question, and we can move on from this, but did you get the sauces?
I did not this time.
What?
Because it was, she was managing 2 kids and I didn't want to be.
All right, fair enough.
Excuse me, make sure that you get, the order must be perfect.
You're a wise man for foregoing that.
So I was just grateful to have anything to eat. So
fair enough. Fair enough. That checks out.
In retrospect, I probably should have been picking food up for her. But I digress.
Yeah. Well, now I'm hungry, but all food topics aside for now, I don't think, is there anything else we need to mention or talk about before diving in here?
I say let's just dive in and get going.
All right. Well, yeah, let's do it. So, boom, talking about Critical Role today. And if you're new to us, if this is the first time you're seeing us, you might be on our recap video, which for every podcast, we like to do a little bit of a recap for each Critical Role episode. And we cut that out of our podcast and host that separately for your viewing convenience. So if you find yourself on that recap video and you're like, hey, let me check out the rest of this podcast where they actually talk about the episode, discuss Theorycraft, you're in luck. We'll link that below. Check us out. But without further ado, let's jump into said recap. And it was episode 23. Is that? Yep. I believe.
Yep. To the Skies.
To the Skies. Oh yeah, we got the title out.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, episode 23 of Critical Role, To the Skies. We pick up basically with the party at the end of last episode had made their way back to the Spire by Fire and are essentially taking a long rest. But before that concludes, Travis lets us know that he's got a little business as Chetney that he wants to take care of. So Chetney sneaks out of the Spire by Fire and heads to the Prism Emporium. And he's being real stealthy about it. He's got like his cloak up, avoiding people. And he gets there, and
is this the place, by the way, that he bought the chisels from earlier, like to replace?
Yes, and like
okay. That's what I thought.
He like wrote the person's name down because they charged him too much or something.
Yeah.
So he's now making his way back there, and it is closed. The front door is locked, but there are lights on inside. And he notices that there's like an awning nearby on the side of the building. So with a successful like athletics check, Chetney is able to get up on the awning and then get up on the roof of this building. And he actually goes into the chimney and shimmies his way down it with a natural 20 and is able to, not get stuck, first of all, but also not make too much noise, and makes his way to the bottom, avoids the fire, and then kind of continually being stealthy makes his way through the shop. And he can hear a rummaging coming from a little bit, further in. And that rummaging is none other than Tuyen Otwana, which hopefully pronouncing that correctly, who is the said clerk that we were just talking about that Chetney had seen in a previous episode. And they are basically closing down the shop for the night. Chet rolls another natural 20 to basically like ominously announce his presence and says like, I'm sorry, the door was closed. And Tuyin just begins to like freak out, and Chetney starts like throwing his voice around different parts in the room and makes an intimidation check and kind of growls just to scare her. And she begins just like apologizing profusely because Chetney's like, you should be charging more fairly for your wares. Like a shop should be a safe place to come. And so she's just freaking out. She's like, I'll make it better. Like, please don't hurt me. Like, I'll charge fair wages, anything you want. And Chetney says, the old me would have just hated you from afar, but now, like, the new me wants revenge. And with that, he transforms into a werewolf, and she screams and basically makes her way for the door. But Chet takes a swipe at her, actually deals, I think, 9 damage, and like her blood splatters against the wall as Matt describes it, and she's like screaming in pain. And I think Matt even asks Travis, he's like, hey, how far are you going with this? Like, are you holding back? Are you going all the way? And Chetney's kind of like, it is what it is.
Yeah, he's like,
yeah. And so she's freaking out, and he activates his Crimson Right, which will make his flames or his claws flame up with power. Yeah. And so he says he uses that to cauterize the wound he just caused on her. And he says, like, now I'll know how to like recognize you and find you, and I will be back. And with that, he leaves her a healer's kit next to her, and then he darts for the door. But Travis like rolls really low on his, I don't remember what kind of check it was, like an athletics check or something.
He wanted to bust through the door.
Yeah, so the door's locked.
Naturally.
And so he rolls to bust through it, but he rolls poorly and just like slams into it and falls back down. And then he awkwardly is like, you got the key. So she gives him the key, and he unlocks it and leaves. And there's like this crowd forming outside because she's been screaming and there's been all this commotion. So Chetney immediately goes invisible and makes his way back to the Spire by Fire and ultimately to bed. So amazing little like vignette we got to start the episode.
Of Travis the serial killer.
Yes. We'll discuss that more later. But so now morning comes, everyone's successfully gotten a long rest, and the party basically convenes and kind of has some quick discussions. First and foremost, they have nominated Fern to be like their official item keeper, both like in-game and above table, kind of like the one who's going to be in charge of keeping track of things. And because they're talking about items and stuff, they basically spend like the next hour, it felt like, or at least a good chunk of time, messing with this portable hull and figuring out all of its capabilities, how they could kind of abuse it in different ways. And they basically come to learn a few things. One, that the oxygen inside is limited. And I think there's about 10 minutes of oxygen, they said. That people inside the portable hull can hear what's happening outside, but the people outside cannot hear what's happening inside. And also that Imogen's telepathy also does not like work cross hull barrier or whatever we want to call it. And finally, they do test a piece of rope hanging in it and then closing up the hole to see what would happen to the rope, and it does get sliced. So a no for being in the surface of that when it closes. So after they do all that, Orym then presents Chetney with the horn that they bought from Marwa's, thinking it'll be best suited in his hands since he likes to go invisible and scout ahead, and he could use that to alert them if he finds something. So Chetney thanks him for that and uses this as an opportunity to present Orym with a gift of his own, and the gift that he has been carving for him. And so first he gets out this little moon plate and is like, I started this on you, but it's lame. And he just like tosses that aside. But instead I made you this box, and he presents him with this like beautifully carved box, and it's got the big moon and the little moon on it. And basically the whole cast, both in character and out, are like oohing and ahhing over it. And of course, Orym is, very thankful and thinks it's beautiful. And they just have a little bit of a moment. Moving on, though, the party then decides to get some supplies kind of off screen for like food and water for this airship journey. So, they do that, and then they actually head to Estros's one last time before heading out. And, they get there, and he's got his apron on, and he's actually finishing up the cookies that they asked him to bake for them. And so he finishes up his last little batch and hands those over to them. And they actually get the statue, which they've been leaving at his house, from Gianna Hexam's place. And now they have the portable hole. Fern throws that in there. And before they head out, Orem is like, hey, not that we're never going to see you again, but, just since we don't know what our plans are, I just wanted you to know that, like, we are so thankful to have met you. And, we wouldn't have been able to do what we've done without you, just like a sincere thanks. And Imogen adds on to it that, like, yeah, you're a good person, and like I have not met many, and you are one. And Estros is getting a little embarrassed, and basically thanks the party as well, but he's like, you don't know the breadth of it. Like, I did some stuff in my younger years, I'm just trying to make up for it now. And he's like, just try to keep your hearts pure, because the world will do everything it can to break you. And Fern kind of jumps in before they leave to ask him if Mistress Prudage was more than just his patron, if there might be a little bit more to that relationship. And Estros is like, well, you look at the time, you guys better get going. Yeah. And he basically just shoos them out. So then the party make their way to the airship. They're heading out of town, and they make their way to the skyport and arrive at the Silver Sun, which is the name of the airship. And it's this, I was going to say it's big, but it's this big airship. It's got like a sandy color scheme, some off-white sails, some ballistas on either side, and 2 chunks of broomstone on each side, and then 1 chunk in the middle, I believe Matt described it as. And they're just taken away by it. They're like, this is the highest we've ever been, and just very excited. They get on, and a human walks up to them and introduces himself as Khalil, and he is the first mate of the ship. They introduce themselves as Bell's Hells, and he's like, all right, let me take you to the captain. So he takes them over to this sturdy looking like non-binary tiefling with curved horns, a face tattoo, and like a massive saber at their side. And I think the line is, don't make a problem, don't get thrown overboard. Sandus has apparently thrown 20 people overboard, supposedly. And they've got 15 years of experience, so just don't get in their way. They let them know that this is a bare bones crew just to get the ship moving and back, and, stay out of the way. But the party's like, if we can help do anything, let us know. And so they quickly introduce themselves and kind of give a quick, like, what they're good at. And one thing of note is that F.C.G. actually introduces Ashton as their leader.
Right.
And then Captain Sandus says, you're allowed to go anywhere but my captain's quarters. That's off limits. And they say they're finishing a sandwich, and as soon as that is done, that's when they'll be heading off. So Khalil then takes them, kind of finishing the tour of the ship, takes them below deck where everyone will be sleeping. And on the way, they are also introduced to Denalia, who is this like timid bugbear and is also the chef of the ship, and also a couple deckhands, Tirana, who is a dwarvish woman, and Gordy, who is a male Goliath. Khalil's like, I'll show you how to operate the different parts of the ship once we actually get going, but for now, that's the tour. This is where you'll be sleeping. Yeah, we're going to be heading off soon. So the party then heads up deck as well to see things actually set off, and Imogen and Laudna both are like prestidigitation, setting off some fireworks as the ship takes off, and that's basically where we go to break.
Yeah. So coming back from the break, Xandus he's just a character. He has this really funny accent, and even Fern is like, yeah, where are you from? What's that accent? And I can't remember where he said, I think it was the continent, with the letter I.
Asilra? Is that what he said?
Asilra. Yeah, he says Asilra. But they're basically, it's going to be a 5 days travel. So they're kind of just, chilling out, waiting for them to finally get to Bassaras. And there's a variety of different conversations that happen. Imogen sort of mentally talks to Ashton, who's looking over the deck kind of in the distance, and just says basically like, hey, you're from where we're going, right? Like, what made you leave? And Ashton kind of plays coy and just says, well, once you see it, if you remember last episode, he said it was basically like a trash can. Like, it was just not a great place. But he basically says, it's rare anyone goes to Bassaras. It's most people leave that area because it's, just not anything worth mentioning. There's a couple of things that happen. Orem, Liam O'Brien, just being such a cool solo role player, has this moment where he ties a rope onto the ship and then ties it onto his ankle, and then in this very agile way kind of like practices. I can't remember if he was like going on the rail of the ship or if he was like actually going off the side and like wall walking or something. I'm not really sure.
I assumed it was the rail, but that would be really cool if that's what he was doing.
Well, it was something, and then Gordy's like, that's super dangerous, right? And it's super cool. So they have just, kind of a conversation there. And they do see in the distance these lights that collect into what seems to be a large city. I think it was Gujar Sarai or something to that effect. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
Your guess is as good as mine.
But it's called the Green City, and they think of themselves as sort of like the people in charge in this area, in the Hellcatch Valley. And Matt points out that actually the crawlers, which are sort of a sub-faction within the city and around the city, and that he also describes as being very Mad Maxian, that they don't believe in any kind of centralized authority, and really the Green City sees themselves as the leader really through the name alone. I think the first day goes by relatively normal. The second day, they see in the distance, I can't remember if it was like a mountain range or something to that effect, but they see another trail of lights that collect at another small city called King's Fall. Xandis doesn't know why it's called King's Fall. Ashton asks Matt, hey, would I know why it's called King's Fall? He rolls a history check and rolls like an 8. And Matt's like, no, sorry. So they're getting like these little spots, these little interesting landmarks that maybe they'll revisit at a later point. But in the sake of the journey, there's not much happening with those locations. They also find themselves in the Rift, which the Rift is the portion of the Hellcatch Valley where sort of like the lush forest of the Odiran Wilds falls off into the Hellcatch Valley. And the way Matt describes it is that, when the calamity happened in Exandria, hundreds of years ago, that this portion of the Hellcatch Valley is where it literally like dropped 300 feet and became kind of a barren wasteland. And so that's why it's called the Rift. And there's sinkholes all over the place that seemingly create like these collapse of earth and sand, and then strangely enough will fill up at a later point. And also Matt points out that there's sinkholes that are labeled on the map, that they see that aren't on the map. And Matt even offers to write them in onto the map. Presumably that the map was created before these sinkholes appeared, or that there's something shifting about the Rift.
Yeah.
All this to say, I think it's F.C.G. who's like doing watch or something, and he rolls an 8, and Matt's like, okay. And Orem's talking to Gordy, and they see something in the distance, something in like the shadow of the horizon. And it is something called a Skarath Hunter, which the best analogy I think of is like a fierce manta ray that wants to fly and kill you.
Yeah.
If you've played the Burning Crusade in WoW, like in the Outlands, like the manta stingrays, they're a lot like that.
Yeah.
But these Skarath Hunters basically zoom in with lightning speed, and combat begins. Without getting too in the weeds of combat, it lasts a few rounds. The coolest thing about combat is for the first time, we see some really unique abilities that we haven't seen yet from our adventurers. Ashton does something really cool, like the crystals in his head become clear and translucent and kind of like whirl up. And he creates a portal in front of him that he can swing his hammer into, and then the portal appears like 10 or 15 feet away, and the hammer goes through it and hits one of these manta ray hunters. Cool. And then actually later, when he finally kills one of the manta rays, he like lunges like 20 feet, smashes its head open, and then as he's falling, he creates a portal that he falls through so that he can land on his feet on the deck below. Just insanity.
Yeah.
So that happens. They also jump onto the little ballistas, like the harpoon guns that are on the sides of the ship. And those do, I think, 60-10 worth of damage. They're massive, and they hit with both of them. And other than that, I'm trying to think of other things that happened that were really important. Fern tried to talk to them and realized that they were not animals. They're actually monstrosities. And then Orem actually gets knocked off of the ship, where Laudna just barely casts, I think it was Featherfall or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And so he gets knocked off the ship, and presumably to his death. Matt actually, basically, Laudna tries to cast this, and he's like, no, you wouldn't have seen it. And then she argues for it, and he says, okay, let's let the dice decide. And then she rolled like an 18 or like a natural 19. And so just barely gets it off, falls over the ship, and Featherfall causes him to kind of levitate. He does actually get hit with the sail of the ship that kind of sends him sprawling. And Imogen, out of nowhere, has this crackling purple energy that launches her into the air, and she casts Fly to the surprise of herself and everyone else. And she swoops down and picks up Orem, and I kind of envision like her just holding him like in his arms, like this little baby person, and brings him back up to the ship. So they end up defeating the hunters. They do, for whatever reason, kind of realizing the exotic nature of these beasts, they decide to try to harvest them. Chetney actually is proficient in alchemical supplies, and he's able to grab like the spine or like the tail spike of this creature, like where the barbs were shooting out. And basically, like Matt describes it as milking it, and milks 5 vials of this black, inky, poisonous liquid. And then Fern decides that she wants to take an eyeball with her. And so she sticks her hand into like the visage of this creature and pops it out. Wants to put it in the hole, but Ashton's like, I just don't know if we want to stink up the hole with that. So other than that, the party finally gets a full night's rest after that. They do blame Khalil for not doing his part as first mate. I think Chetney's like, hey, these harpoons weren't loaded. Like, he's not doing his job. You need to get onto him. And Xanis is like, thank you for tattletaling on my own crew. But also points out, he's like, well, we don't keep them loaded because, if the ship has to turn suddenly, we don't want it to like fire and kill one of you, basically. And they're like, that seems like a good idea. That's a good call. After combats, basically, they have 5 days travel. So I think it's like around day 3 or day 4 where F.C.G is talking to Imogen and is basically like, and they've had these interactions where they're kind of like, hey, are you good? Are you feeling okay? And obviously, Imogen is very aloof about it. She doesn't, it's almost like there's a bit of an addiction with the Gnarl Rock shard that she doesn't want to clue them into. And F.C.G offers, he's like, hey, for your dream, if you want, I could potentially bring Laudna into your dream as sort of like a bridge. And she's like, yeah, okay. I don't know if I want to do that right now, but I'm interested. Like, we can maybe do something like that. Separate from that, Fern actually sneaks into Laudna's room at night. I think it was a natural 20 or a natural 19.
Yeah.
And she takes pate and sashimi and positions pate on top of sashimi in a sexual manner and then sneaks out. I don't know why she wanted to do this, but she did. And then Fern wakes up and she's like, they do have souls, almost like kind of like a Toy Story-esque.
Yeah.
Alive. And she was like, you randy fools. All that to say, the last real meaningful conversation is on one of the last days, Laudna and Imogen are by themselves on the deck of the ship late at night while everyone is sleeping. And Laudna basically is like, it's kind of like they're pretty much best friends and almost like sisters. And she's kind of checking in and is like, Imogen, I'm kind of concerned. Like, you just seem different. Like, with all this power you've been getting, it's really great. I'm proud of you, but like, do you feel like you're doing okay? And Imogen again is kind of aloof about it. And she's like, yeah, I didn't even know I could cast Fly, for example. And essentially, Laudna basically cuts to the chase and she's like, is it the rock? Is it the stone? Like, do you feel like it's making you worse off? And Imogen kind of plays coy, and she's like, well, I don't think it's good or bad. I mean, but I do find like a security in it. And she finally opens up and is like, I've thought about just throwing it off the edge of the ship since we got up here. And Lana feels this sensation, like this prickly sweat on the back of her neck, that it's like this urgency or like this fearfulness at that line of throwing it off. And as they continue to talk, she feels this irresistible sensation to hold the shard herself. And so finally Lana says, Imogen, why don't you let me hold it? And maybe I can feel some of the sensation you're feeling so I can better understand it and better understand how to help.
Yeah.
And Imogen's very hesitant, and she says, like, you're not going to like do anything, right? And Lana's like, I would never do anything without your permission. So hands it to her. She immediately grips it and feels this hot burning sensation in her hand going down her arm. She tries to drop it. She can't. Imogen's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And she hears Delilah Briarwood in the back of her head. And Delilah basically says, child, this is much too dangerous for you. I'll take care of it. And the rest, this is such a cool scene. The rest of the cast is all just like, what is going on? Matt describes the energy. It feels like kind of like a heartbeat crawling up her shoulder, and then this warm heat resting in her chest. And then she opens the stone. She tried to let it go. It wouldn't let her. She finally opens the stone, and it is dull and absent of any energy and actually shattered in her hands. And Imogen is like, what did you do? And in the first moment of division between them, she says, you lied to me. And then she basically says, I'm going to go to bed. And Lana, left alone, goes to the end of the ship and is basically to Delilah, what did you do? And Delilah says, I took care of it, and thank you. And that is where episode 23 ends for Critical Role.
Oh, emotional ending.
Dude, amazing ending. So, hey, that's our recap. If you're checking out the recap video, click on the link in the description of the episode to see our full discussion. Having said that, all right, here we go again.
I hated it.
What did you think?
No, it was amazing. We got so much cool stuff. I mean, with how it ended, obviously that was like the biggest moment of the whole episode, but can't forget that it started with such an amazing moment too with Travis, and
that was amazing.
I loved it. I mean, we joke about this, but tune into the episode where we say we hate it, because that one's probably going to be real interesting. But
yeah, that one has to be bad. Yeah. You'll just know it is.
But yeah, what about you? I'm sure it's the same.
All right. I loved it. Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I mean, these guys are just so fun to watch. I feel like I don't want to I feel like I always do the same things. I mean, they're fun to watch. It's great. Chetney was amazing. All of them were amazing. Lana and Imogen at the end. It was one of those moments where I was like, I wish someone was watching this with me right now, because this is a moment for
Such
sure.
Good actors as well. I mean, Laura was killing it, and I think Ashley even said that exactly after, and it was hilarious to watch her face. But Ashley was just sitting there looking back between both of them, and she was like, I love this game. I have a front row seat to the best theater. Yeah,
and I've actually told something Joy picked up on in Exandria Unlimited was how Ashley is so good at reacting, being part of the session, even when it's not the focus on her.
Yeah.
But just the facial, she is gripped onto whatever's happening. Yeah. You're totally right. She was all the emotions I was feeling, she was showing the agony of it. And then you have Travis just being he's just
yeah.
And then Orem, Liam O'Brien, he goes, whoops, after the stone's broken. So yeah, it is fun to watch a group of people experience something where they're experiencing something really meaningful, and you get to be part of it. Yeah. So yeah, it was an awesome scene for sure.
Absolutely, and well said. I think that puts it nicely for one of the things that's so fun about Critical Role.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we're already talking about it, even though it's the last thing that happened. Should we just dive into that moment?
Dig into it. Yeah. So seems like Delilah we got two details, because we wondered, is Delilah controlling or the patron of several people, and we presumed that was the case. Matt made an interesting comment. He said, "This person who lives in your spirit." So I didn't know if that was just a comment of description, like he's just being descriptive, or if that was like, no, like she lives in you because
like you're the only one,
because of the background with the sun tree or what have you. That was interesting. And then I'm presuming she has absorbed the energy of the Gnarl Rock stone and maybe is trying to come back to life or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually even notice that detail you just pointed out. That's very interesting. That like, I don't even know what the right verbiage would be to use here, but that like Delilah is tied to specifically Laudna, and if so, that would be very interesting. If like she was trying to ultimately like take over her body or something.
Yeah, maybe body snatcher.
But yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought about the whole heartbeat thing. Because to me, I was like, is Matt insinuating that Laudna is now like alive again?
Yeah. I wondered if that was happening, because it's the description was so intentional. It felt like you described it like a warmth, like a heartbeat. These are things that we know are in opposition to who Laudna is, as an undead, or whatever, the
hollow
explicit,
one,
the explicit description is. But I don't know. I mean, it would be really interesting if she was progressing towards becoming human again. I don't know.
Yeah, which I wondered about the heartbeat comment just in general, but now combining that with what you just shed light on makes me wonder if it was like the first sign of maybe Delilah getting a stronger grip on that body if she is trying to ultimately take it. But so clearly she absorbed the energy of it. Like that's what happened. But to what purpose is Delilah just able to? I mean, we know the Gnarl Rock was like, I don't know if evil is the right word, but it like corrupts the things it touches. So is she able to just like, because she's Delilah and like dabbled in the dark magics and stuff, is that why that was possible? Or could Delilah literally sap magical energy from anything if she wanted to? I'm just wondering about like, was this a specific connection and like Delilah is very interested in the exactly what that was, or is it just more of an opportunity to sap some energy?
I take it as like this is an object of immense power. We know it created the who's the villain they fought in the mines?
The Shade Mother.
Yeah, the big bug queen. Yes, we know it corrupts and transforms and does all this crazy stuff. So I interpret it as Delilah observing this as something of incredible power, and to do what I'm going to do, whatever that is, I need that. Can I get that? So
yeah, which is just so many questions. I mean, it seemingly is a part of Laudna now. So like, how else would Delilah be able to utilize that unless she is planning on like literally?
We got kind of a rare moment from Matt too, because Matt is usually content to just sort of sit back and let people do what they want, and he basically said, you should probably take a look at it. Like that's kind of the feeling you had, is you should do this. Which I didn't think it was forced or anything. I just thought it was interesting that it's just rare we get kind of an overt direction from Matt.
To me, and I don't know if this is fair, but to me that was Delilah's voice in her head.
Right.
Know?
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, you lied. I think that's clearly. I mean, it has a lot of layers to it, I think, but I saw some people like debating what they thought that meant. And to me, I think that is just the fact that you promise you're not going to do anything to the rock, right? But obviously, I think it has some like layers to it. Like they have this very close relationship, and the trust was betrayed, right? I do think that all the emotion was there because of the trust being broken, but I think it was probably enhanced because of the corruption. And she's like, kind of like the One Ring, not wanting to give that up. I think that probably played into it.
Yeah, for sure.
Do we know if obviously she's been obsessed with this thing and like touches it when she's sleeping and doesn't want anybody else to see it. But have there been any other tangible effects that like I can't think of any that like.
Well, I mean, I think that's the lore explanation for Fly. You know, so she leveled up. I guess she picked up Fly. She has a conversation either with Laudna or someone else who's like, I think Laudna says, "Did the rock help you like learn to do that?" And she's basically like, "I don't know. I mean, maybe." So I think, yeah, I think there's this very. It was so well done, the whole thing, because it wasn't just like, oh, you broke my rock. It's like, no, you're kind of like you said, the one ring that is she's feeling maybe a sense of security from and control from, and seems to be growing stronger because of it. If Fly is implied to have come from it, and she has this very intimate relationship with it, where it's like, you know, she goes to sleep at night clutching it, and now it's been taken from her. So, and we've just always known that Imogen and Laudna are BFFs, you know, or maybe
more.
Yeah, maybe more. We don't know, but extremely close. This is a very interesting plot point for sure.
Yeah, and I honestly can't wait to see how it gets picked up. Which, I mean, it's not like we left right on that cliffhanger. They did part ways, you know, like she says, "I'm going to bed." But I really can't wait for the aftermath of this. Also, just so like the other people are gonna find out, like especially Orem. Like if Orem hears the name Delilah Briarwood, that's gonna set off alarms for him, because I'm sure he's familiar with that name given his connection to Keyleth and everything. Because and we may have even known this before this episode, but Imogen knows of Delilah, right? Like, didn't she even say, was it her or something?
Yeah, I don't know if she knows. I don't know how much she has said before this episode, but in their conversation when Laudna's basically trying to comfort Imogen, she's basically like, I get it. I get what it's like to have this other power that feels comforting to draw on. Right. And I had actually forgotten about her being like swallowed by like the viney creature or whatever in the Heartmoor. But yeah, she says like, has she spoken to you recently? And she's like, yeah. And the Heartmoor, she made this very grand entrance. So yeah, she's obviously aware of her, knows of her. I think she even like looked her up and read about her in the
You're
library.
Right. You're right. So she
curiosity. Yeah, because she wanted to find out, could she free Laudna of the patronship, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm really curious if Imogen's gonna like spill the beans to everyone else, because I don't think anyone else knows that name. Maybe F.C.G, since he was like there, but he wasn't like paying attention, nor probably like reading over her shoulder when she was researching. But yeah, I also, speaking of, this was a while back that we talked about this, but the rest of the cast's like reactions during that moment, it was interesting to watch Taliesin kind of hear Delilah, and you know, he's got a pretty, you know, strong connection to that character from his campaign 1 days. But yeah, so in character and out of character, I would just love to see everyone else find out about this, which I don't know. I kind of could see her not bringing it up either. Like, and just, I don't know the right word here, not being spiteful, but just being like, you know, kind of done with Laudna, and just like not like giving her the silent treatment, but just like not addressing it, and, you know, just kind of like moving on. So I don't know. I'm interested to see. Maybe we'll get some more on that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, I wonder, with details like this, are we like, you know, with campaign 1, I don't know if this is the case with campaign 2, but you know, there's like the Briarwood arc, then there's like the blank arc or what have you. Part of me wonders, in retrospective, are we continuing to get like these little breadcrumbs, or are we about to potentially get like an entry into like a larger story point? Like, is this, because I think that, I mean, obviously no way to know, but if it's the former, then maybe they do just continue on and there's some awkwardness there, and maybe next session or in a couple sessions she's like, yeah, I understand, it's okay, like we're fine. Or maybe it's the beginning of a serious rift for two characters that seemed unbreakable in terms of their relationship, and it's like, okay, yeah, where is this might be like a total focal point as they go on their adventure. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited. I'm really excited that tonight's the next episode because I want to see what's going to happen for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And
But
yeah, I not to just keep harping on these same points, but I'm interested to see, and obviously this next episode will be picking up right from the moment, so I'm sure the emotions are still fresh, but if she maybe is cool with it eventually because she can recognize that it was like corrupting her and is, just right now it sucks and hurts real bad, but maybe she'll be like, oh, thank you for doing that, like that was
yeah, I don't
doing
know. I
bad
mean,
stuff.
I think for her, she was like really tormented by this dream, and acquiring the rock kind of gave her her first sense of like control over that dream, or at least a new direction. And so I think Laden, when they were even talking about maybe her getting brought into the dream, there was even a comment from Laden on like, maybe you should wait till Ruidus is at its peak, which again is implying that we're near that, maybe the solstice. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually makes me wonder if Delilah, if their friendship isn't as authentic as we think, but that just like Delilah kind of goaded her into like, you need to look at this stone for yourself. Not saying that Laden isn't genuine in her relationship with Imogen, but if Delilah's drawn to sources of great power, Imogen is like the stereotypical, I can't think of the expression, the analogy, but the being of immense power.
Yeah, a root is born that
having
this dream is connected to this cycle.
Yeah, I'm sure they are authentically friends, but maybe there's a little bit more of intentionality there that Laudna isn't herself aware of, because Delilah sees an opportunity.
I like that a lot. I hadn't thought of that, but so like their meeting wasn't such a chance encounter. Like this is Delilah pulling the strings of like, I like that. But again, to your point, not that Laudna knows that and is manipulating her, but she's just a patsy in the game. I like that a lot, because I mean, seemingly Imogen is not the chosen one, not that far, but she's clearly connected to this whole thing. And as we know from the Legend of Vox Machina and stuff, Delilah has tried to use this very celestial event before, so perhaps she's trying to use it again, and now she's got herself a nice little conduit in Imogen or something.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Delilah, I'd want to stick to Imogen's hip for sure. Go where she's going, because they don't really have much of a reason to be together other than it was like, oh, she passed through my village, and it was like, yeah, let's stay together. So it would be interesting in retrospect if neither one realized that it wasn't as serendipitous as maybe they described it.
Yeah, that would be really cool if that was the case. Yeah. I like that.
We're calling it. We said it here first on the Pixelists podcast. If it doesn't happen, just forget about this.
That's right. We'll delete this segment. And no one will ever know. But yeah, I mean, I still have a lot of questions, but it's just basically I'm going to go in circles with all my postulating. But mainly, I can't wait to see the aftermath of this. And I want to just know more about why and how Delilah was able to siphon that, and like what, like, again, I don't want to keep going on this for another 30 minutes, but like, I wonder if Laudna will now have like a buff to her capabilities or her power because of that energy that's now inside of her. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that'd be interesting for sure. Yeah, because we're getting some cool lore descriptions for why new things are happening, which we mentioned. Fly, we mentioned Ashton, but I forgot to mention in the recap that Orym actually asks Ashton like, how come you can suddenly do that? Which is like, I think this is just such peak D&D table. Like, we're like, someone gets like a super cool ability, and you're like, hey, how did that happen? Or if it's like one of my tables, it's like, oh, cool, you can shoot fireballs anyway. There's like no discussion about, like, no one's even curious. But he's like, I had a weird dream last night, which happened off camera. So I'm curious about that too. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, me too. I'm curious if that was just like a quick offhanded comment because he needed to think of something, or if there really was like something he and Matt talked about, it'll be super interesting. But yeah, I always love those moments, and not to harp on it again, but like Imogen going, what did they even called her, like the Scarlet Witch or something in that moment.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
that was just such a cool, flavorful way to do it. Be it from the Null Rock, be it from just leveling up, and that's how she wanted to do it. I mean, like you mentioned at some of our tables, it's just those things happen without a second thought, and it's just, I don't know. One of the reasons
yeah.
Critical Role is so good is that they put thought into all those things.
I will say something I'm excited about is it feels like, I mean, you have someone who can fly, you have someone who can portal, is the portal basically, I think Chetney said something like, or Travis basically was like, oh my gosh, you basically have like Misty Step. And Ashton was like, yeah, something like that. So it seems like he has kind of like a character homebrew specific version of that, but also the fact that he can create portals and send things through it, even attack through it.
Yeah.
I'm just really intrigued from someone who DMs a campaign. I'm really intrigued to see how Matt handles these really potentially able to be abused abilities, and like balances all of it, especially in combat. Like just like the DM hat that I wear sometimes, I'm like, how do you even deal with that? So because they're getting very creative in their abilities.
For sure. And as the whole 30-minute discussion on the portable hole tells you, they're going to try to think of every way that they can abuse it. But I do know that in the past, when Matt has like homebrewed some stuff, you know, regardless of what that is, he will tweak it on the fly. So like we may see that get nerfed if it is a problem, or maybe buffed. He's done that in the past. But yeah, such cool flavor. I mean, what a cool way to get your barbarian a ranged attack by, you know, they don't have to just throw a throwing knife or something. Just, how about you just portal and you can do your normal melee but far away.
Yeah, it's super cool because you think of the class fantasy of a barbarian. You don't want to, all right, I shoot my crossbow again.
Yeah.
So
and that's one of like the main weaknesses of barbarians. So like it'll be, I don't know, just super cool. And it kind of plays into the whole, we went into a long discussion on this last episode, but the whole Dunamantic energy vial that, you know, has made Ashton who they are. It's cool that the powers of that are continuing to flavor his abilities and stuff. And I was really taken away by the fact that he could actually portal himself too. Like I thought it was just going to be the weapon thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I'll love to see like all right, sorry, I'm getting in the weeds on this, but when he did portal himself at the end of that attack, he had attacked, right? So is Misty Step a bonus action? Because if it's an action,
let's see.
And again, it might have just been a flavor thing, and
let's see,
like to hell with that
action.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Because I was wondering like how often he could do that, or
right.
I mean, we'll find out, I guess, but thought it was awesome is the long and the short of it. And
all that to say,
yeah,
it was awesome.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see it. You know, presumably if we get there, what high level stuff Matt has created for this new class that, or class isn't the right word, but whatever it's called.
Yeah, no, yeah, subclass.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I want to see level 20, what it can do.
I mean, you think we're gonna get there?
Probably not. I mean, in campaign 1 they went to 20, but
they started at what, 8?
They started out higher. I don't remember.
9, I think.
And in campaign 2 they didn't quite get there. So I imagine they typically won't get there, but maybe there's like a time jump or something, and you know, we jump from level 10 to 18 or something.
There's like a lost week in there somewhere.
is that EXU callback right there?
Yeah, dude.
Nice. I like
maybe
that.
In this episode we're gonna find out what happened. Oh, it was a playtest all along.
It's canon-ish.
Yeah. So what level did they start in campaign 2? It was 2, right? Or was it 3? No, it was 2.
It wasn't 1. I know that much.
Yeah.
So
I think it was. What level did they get to?
I should know, but I think it was like 15 to 18. I don't think they quite got to 18, but somewhere around there. Maybe 16.
Yeah. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, interesting.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
so yeah, we got some cool new flavor. Interested to see. It seems like, for better terminology, we're like stepping into, for lack of better terms, we're stepping into like kind of a more Ashton focused part of the story.
Maybe.
Which I say that he's been a pretty central character. They all have, actually, but F.C.G's story, I guess, has been more supplementary, in the sense of like people curious about him telling what happened, whereas like Imogen's been directly tied to like the Loomis twins. Ashton, obviously, they did work with Gianna Hexam. I'm just curious to see like if where we're going with them, and like what caused them to leave Bassaros and head to Dressar, because they've been in Dressar for a while, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and me too. I'd love to see if that cult prediction ended up that you pointed out, that maybe he was part of that Hishari cult.
Right.
If that is the case, I'm really interested to learn more about that. And I don't know if you and I talked about this on podcast time or not, but I think we talked about it off podcast. But there was confirmation that Genasi, that that he made the comment about like I used to be soft. We were wondering what that might mean, and apparently Genasi do start as like more normal, for lack of a better word, and when they hit puberty, they gain traits of their tribe or elements or whatever.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
But that being said, for all we know, it could still be something crazy, and he wasn't a Genasi at all. But anyway, all this to say that I am very interested to learn more about Ashton, whatever it may be. So yeah, if we got more of a Ashton central arc coming up, I'm excited for that.
Well, and we're heading to like the silver mine or wherever, also, or
Yeah,
the
it's that
general
part of the
area
world, right? Yeah.
for F.C.G. So that'd be really interesting. It's also interesting too that it seems like they're heading past so many landmarks that, like, I presume they're not gonna go to all of them.
We
Probably
may
not
never
go to
see,
any of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the curious side of me wonders like what Matt has cooked up and maybe like put on the shelf of like, oh, I wonder if it'd be cool to do that, or I'm just curious to see what happens with some of these things. Like no one seems to know what this history of Kingsfall is in terms of like the name, and so
what is that? I want to know.
Exactly. Right.
Maybe they'll just ask around, even if they don't go there, since they like actually brought that up and talked about it for a minute. I hope somebody like remembers to just ask about that to some knowledgeable person in the future. Because I'm the same way. Those all piqued my interest. And then this is kind of a segue, not really, but before we stepped too far away from it, one thing I did want to mention that I actually forgot to mention last episode in talking about players' new abilities and cool flavor and stuff is that both Chetney and Fern took a level in Rogue the last time they leveled up.
Right.
Chetney, I get, he's kind of the party's de facto rogue in a lot of ways. Fern makes a little less sense, but to me, it's just all almost flavor reasons. She likes to steal things, so I'm guessing she maybe took a level in that to help her sleight of hand and maybe some stuff for that reason, as opposed to like a pure, like she's trying to be a rogue type of reasons.
Yeah, because the sneak attack damage, she's a druid, and so when you're so here's a question: when you wild shape, can you get sneak attack damage on the wild shape attack?
I guess. I would assume you could if the conditions were met. I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Do rogues have sneak attack like from level 1? I'm not.
I think
familiar
so.
enough to know if that's like something they get or something they
or
always
level
have.
2. Let's see. Let me take a look. I think it's level 1, but yeah, level 1.
So that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up because
it's also only a 1d6, so
it's not like the biggest. So yeah, I'm sure she probably mostly did it for like the
flavor of it,
the kleptomaniac side of her,
right?
But just wanted to mention it because that caught me off guard when I saw that on the nameplate. Again, Chetney made sense, but I was like, wait, Fern. So just wanted to throw that in real quick. But then, um, sorry, looking through my notes really quick. Oh, speaking of Chetney, that's the other main thing I wanted to talk about was just basically the intro to this episode. Um,
Yeah,
like,
talk about questionable.
yeah,
I mean, I thought we were about to get like a lore drop of like this was someone that there was a clue and we missed, and this was like this person knew Ultgar or something. But I remember that episode where he was like, yeah, it was like how much was it? Like 60 gold or something crazy, or I don't
yeah.
remember.
I don't remember the amount either, but he felt like
But
he
it
was
was like
getting ripped off.
yeah, it was like, oh, it's the finest mahogany or something. I'm making it up. I can't remember, but yeah, that was a bit brutal.
As,
It was great. It was great, but also I was like, are we the baddies? Like,
yeah,
like Matt even like I think he's like, yeah, you see like exposed bone, and people are like, and he's like, this is a merchant, Travis.
yeah. My thoughts exactly was that it was an amazing like sequence and like so cool for
Right.
Travis to like have that idea and go do that, especially because he has been planning it. Obviously, that the first encounter where he like writes down the name on the list, could have just been a one-off joke, but no, like he was literally writing that down because he wanted to come deal with this later. Uh, he's making a list. He's checking it twice. Going scurrying down chimneys. There's a lot of allusions, I'll say, maybe to his original character that this was based off of. But yeah, what a cool direction to take. Like the morally like messed up kind of that he did that. So
Yeah, basically assaulted and nearly maimed a defenseless woman. I mean,
yeah, and then the duality to then like give this really heartwarming carved gift he's been working on to his friend. I just thought it was like a hilarious like duality of Chetney, um, which to me, and maybe this is too simple an explanation, but it's like it's the werewolf in him, right? Like we talked about this whole concept with Ajit Dial in the last episode about like, and everyone asked Chetney like, have you ever lost control? Like, have you ever? And he was like, no. So to me, this is one moment of that type of thing that I assume all werewolves have to deal with. But maybe that's too clean of a pass, and maybe Chetney just has some demons that he needs to work out or wants to work out now that he has this new power. I don't know.
yeah, it's a little too clean for me in the sense of like Ajit Dial's description made me think of a more like feral, out of control type situation.
True.
Like when he attacked Orem. This felt more like because he was actually in the shadows, and then he basically gives into it. Like the werewolf comes out as he's like, taunting him, and but it could also be something subtle, kind of like we said with Laudna and Delilah. Like he feels like this drive or like this, hunger that sort of forces him forward, and he doesn't realize, or maybe he knows it's the wolf in him. I don't know, but and then there could also just be, Travis just really wanted to do this one thing, without really much thought of like the overall story of his character, and just was like, I'm going to go back to this person's shop.
I
So,
I will give Travis. I don't think it was that. He's very like he's one of the. I don't want to not ranking them at all, but Travis is one of my favorites, and he's very like he's very
intentional.
on it all the time. So I feel like this was intentional, and I mean, he used the word list, so presumably there's other people on it, and I'm interested to see who else he wants to pay back, and what their slight was. If it was just like a rude shopkeeper, or maybe something more.
I'm curious. I mean, I guess the party, are they ever going to find out about it?
Yeah, that's interesting. Ah.
Because sometimes things can happen like as a one-off. Like I know in a campaign that I'm in, some really crazy stuff has happened with like individual characters, but so much else has happened that there hasn't been like
Haven't had
any
time to
opportunity,
like.
and it hasn't like made sense to be like, hey, I had a dream like 2
Right.
months ago, So I'm just curious to see like, will it come up in some way? Like, will they find out about it? Will they challenge him about it? I don't know. I mean, yeah,
I bet they will. Maybe not. Might not be anytime soon. It might not be this specific incident of it, but I bet eventually they will find out if he does this to somebody else, or maybe just it somehow gets brought up. Because I mean, that's the far more interesting choice, you know. So I feel like he's making those things to ultimately like have those moments maybe down the line.
Right.
But yeah, definitely was premeditated, which makes it seem less of the feral werewolf type of thing and like something he,
Right.
you know, set out to do.
Intentionally, dude. Yeah.
But it's just how much of that is because of the werewolf inside him versus just him taking advantage of the strength he has now.
Right.
So yeah, I, you know, loved that moment. Loved Travis, of course. So I'm really excited that he kind of like took that risk. Like that's just such a cool direction to have. Is not that he's evil, but just that, you know, he did something that was definitely morally
super questionable.
Yeah. So just a cool little dynamic to have at the table. And I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, me too, for sure. So what else? There was one other small detail I was thinking of when Xanis was talking about, they were asking like if they've ever been to King's Fall. And Xanis is like, oh no, we mostly go from Dressar to Ank'Harel to Vasselheim, between those three places. And isn't Vasselheim, wasn't that like the capital or something, or like in a super important city?
Yeah, it's like it's in Isilra, which is where he was from. But yeah, it's like the seat of civilization, basically, like the biggest city in the world, or maybe not the world, but at least the continent.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, definitely a major player.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of, there's nothing, I mean, it's total conjecture, but I just noticed that and thought, I wonder what kind of business Esteros has there.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, presumably it's just the Mistress Prudage textile industry, but I mean, who knows? I feel like there's still more to be. There's still more layers to Esteros that we don't know yet. So for all we know, it could be. I mean, I don't know. I'm not just gonna speculate, but yeah, I too am curious about what all's going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Xandis and all of the crew were so fun though. Just to harp back on that for a second, the voice was amazing.
Yeah,
it was cracking me up. So I hope there's more to see from them. Even, you know, maybe we get multiple excursions with this crew throughout the campaign. But
yeah, interesting detail too that they have to basically drop them off and go. He said it's going to be about a day to come back and get you. Like give us like a heads up. But it seems a bit precarious. Yeah, and I think maybe everyone kind of picked up on that of like, oh, that might be kind of interesting. So I mean, presumably, if they're going to where the Paragon's Call is, it's going to be challenging to take Armand from his base of operations and escape with a day's lead time, basically. So they're going to have to plan something out, I guess.
Yeah, and that was interesting because wasn't there supposed to be like a month of free time that they could use the ship? Because
they talked about for up to a month, yeah.
Because, you know, they were like, if you finish that business quick enough, you can take it to Eos as well. So that would seem to me that the ship was free, but the captain's saying they got to go do something. So I wonder.
Well, no, he was saying there's not a like a, because it's kind of like
the no port thing.
Yeah, like they have to basically like let them off and then go park somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Either was like not only was there the fact there wasn't like the port, but also it was kind of like a hostile area, so they couldn't just set down anywhere.
Okay, yeah, that checks out then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wonder where they're gonna be let off then. Like, you think they're gonna be let off at like the nearest port and got to make their way, or they're gonna like rappel off the side of the skyship somehow?
Just probably like over. Probably like over Armand's house, just
like SEAL Team 6 to just
let us down right there. So I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, Paragon's Call is a seemingly large organization. If they could, you know, several hundred miles away, could extend their reach to potentially take over a major city. Like I'm envisioning this is going to be a pretty a city or wherever like specifically the region they're going to be in. It's going to be ideally probably pretty immersed with Paragon's Call influence. So
Yeah.
I don't know where they're going to land. I think it's going to be a bit dangerous though from the get go for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wonder if Ashton will try to use the connection that they made with the was it the general of the Paragon's Call? Because they were like kind of got along and kind of made a connection, right? Like, didn't the general ask if Ashton was like looking for work?
Yeah, something like that.
So I'm sure Taliesin has that in his back pocket, but it'd be cool to see that kind of that card played, and maybe they could walk through the front doors without having to sneak in.
Right.
Yeah, be interesting to see. And this episode tonight, actually the last one for a while.
Right. We start Calamity next week.
Yeah.
4-part miniseries.
Which I hate to go on a long hiatus from the main campaign, but how awesome that we get a whole nother story to keep us company while we wait, and one that I'm pretty excited for. So but yeah, it'll just be interesting to see if what type of cliffhanger we might end on here, that we have to wait like a little bit to see the conclusion to.
Yeah, have they said, is it going to be every last week for the next 4 months?
Calamity?
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's just the next 4 weeks.
Oh, like we're getting that long of a main campaign break?
Yeah, like the main campaign's going on break for like a month.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like that. So that's too bad. I mean, I'm excited for it, but I just love this story.
Yeah.
So.
Me too. So, yeah. But what's awesome is like, the cast needs breaks, and with this pre-recorded schedule, who knows what the actual process is, but how awesome that they are going to weave in, like, it's a break, but we still get stuff, like, so makes it go down a little bit smoother.
The content must continue.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. I guess we'll be talking about that then.
Yeah, we still need to do.
There's a lot we need to do.
We need Kymel as well. They're obviously not going to be connected because this is way in the past. But
But yeah. And The Witcher season 2.
That's coming soon.
Yeah. Just you guys wait. All right. Well, anything else you want to talk about from this episode?
I don't think so. I think we got it.
What's our thumbnail?
All right. Well, there's two. I feel like two possibilities here: Imogen Laudna or Chetney, store clerk. You got a preference between those two? Not that we have stuff lined up.
Both a lot, actually. I think Imogen Laudna because it's the bigger story point.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. So I mean, I'm guessing we just kind of recreate that, like one person being like, oh, I didn't mean to, and the other person.
I thought like one person could be like the. It's almost like Infinity Gauntlet, just kind of like the, and the person's like,
okay,
or something like that.
Yeah. All right, I'm about
it. Which one do you want to
be? You be Infinity Gauntlet.
Cool.
If that's cool with you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. If no one gets anything out of this, at least they'll appreciate the thumbnail.
They better.
Well, guys, let us know what you thought about the episode and your theories on what the heck is going on. Leave them in the comments below. Don't forget, we're on Twitter at the Pixelists. And having said that, it is Thursday.
It's Thursday.
So enjoy the next episode. We'll catch you later.
Yeah. Bye, y'all.